Hello, everybody. It's me, the Enlightened One, and today we are talking vampires. I don't have any teeth, as you can see. It's just like I can't even open my mouth. All right, everyone. It's me, Aaron, the Enlightened One,
and I'm here with you, Craig, the Gray, the Vampire Hunter.
You are a vampire hunter.
You know, you did the intro and you had a hammer. You could have hammered a steak in.
I don't have any steak. Prime rib, that's expensive.
Here we go. How you doing today, Aaron?
I am doing well. We had a huge trending on Twitter yesterday. The wrestler Brian Pillman Jr., the son of the great Brian Pillman, he is no longer under contract to MLW. He's exclusive to AEW. And somehow my tweet ended up being the official tweet of this. So it's at like 3,500 likes right now.
She broke the news.
Well, the funny thing is MJF retweeted us saying, "Kill me," because it's kayfabe, hates this guy. And that just bumped our tweets right up. And now ours is doing better than MJF's and Brian Pillman's. So it's like the official.
Nice.
It's funny how Twitter, something works like that. It's just like, it's magical almost.
It is magic. It's paranormal.
It is almost paranormal. I tell you, I'd have no explanation to why this is like. I've had way better tweets that have done jack squat.
And, so maybe a future episode topic could be algorithms, wrestling with the algorithms.
I don't think that would do so well.
But what are we talking about today, Aaron? What's on the plate?
Wrestling with vampires. I wouldn't want to wrestle with a vampire, I tell you what.
Vampiro?
Not Vampiro. But there's also another wrestling group called The Brood.
Oh.
And Gangrel, he actually took the time to surgically put fangs in for his wrestling gimmick.
Wow, I wonder, could he take them out when he wasn't wrestling, or
no? He surgically got fangs installed.
Whoa!
And he still has them today. So that's commitment to the gimmick, right?
Vampiro was just some white face paint.
Our symbol is live the gimmick, and Gangrel certainly lived the gimmick with that thing.
Vampire gimmick of the day: surgical teeth implants.
Well, yeah, and they even had with Edge and Christian, they had them drinking blood and all that kind of stuff. They were the Brood, so kind of your modern day sort of vampires. They didn't actually say vampires, but we'll get into that because it's not always called vampires, but it's vampiric, I guess.
We've got different things, under the same umbrella.
Is vampiric a word? Vampiric, I think it should be.
Yeah. Is this thing vampiric that you're talking about?
Right?
I think so.
It should be a word.
But that is what we're talking about. Where do you want to start? I got so much stuff on vampires here.
Okay, I'll just lead off here. Where we go? Dead air. Okay, I'm just looking.
Dead air.
Dead air. Okay, so let's just talk about the rules of a vampire.
Then kind of we can make a little circle of what is a vampire and maybe what's outside of this.
Yeah, so what are the rules of a vampire? So one, he can't see himself in a mirror.
No reflection.
What else?
It's immortal, gonna live forever.
And that's a blessing and a curse, right?
It's a blessing or a curse that ties into one of our other episodes.
And he cannot come into your home without being invited.
Yes, that's a weird one. Also, there's another one: can't cross running water. Can't cross over running water.
That's more of an obscure one.
Both of those two, to me, sound like not being able to come inside unless you invite him in, and not crossing over running water. That kind of seems like he's just OCD. That just like seems like
I will not cross the water.
Can't do it. I can't do it.
I'm not. Well, the not coming into your home unless invited, it's kind of ties into reality, spiritual reality. A demon can't come into your house unless he has a reason to come in. He has to have been invited or some sort of rule that's been broken that allows him in.
Mm-hmm. And there's there's actually historically lots of ties between demons and vampires. And maybe even some demons became vampires over time just through people telling stories. So yeah, we could talk about that. Another one obviously has to drink blood.
Yeah.
That's a big one. That's probably the most famous rule.
Garlic. I don't know how this one started. Garlic.
I was watching some documentaries too, and like there's different rules around different places of the world. Like sometimes it's garlic, salt, and silver. Like there's different things that it'll be. Oh, and then holy water. Obviously holy water.
Holy water, crucifix, and your classic steak. Not
steak
the meat.
Through the heart.
Not the meat. It has to be a wooden or metal steak.
Quickest way to a vampire's heart?
A steak. Prime rib steak.
I thought there was and sometimes cutting off their head. Like if we're talking getting into like how to kill the vampire, there's different things too. Cutting off the head. Sometimes a nail through the forehead.
Yeah. So looking at the history of some of this, there's also a thing called the strigoi. Did you come across that?
I found that one too. Yeah.
And so this predates vampires.
Yeah.
And they were spirits who were believed to be risen from the grave, and they could turn invisible or turn into animals, kind of like the vampire. And in Greek, Latin, it means nocturnal bird women feeding off children. And this was in around 1656 Croatia.
Yeah, that area.
There was a villager at that time. He terrorized the town. His name was Yuri Grando, and earlier that year he had died, and he was seen knocking on doors. And if you opened your door, someone in your house was going to die. So if he knocked on your door and you opened it, someone in your house was going to die. And so they eventually caught him and killed him and chopped off his head and all that kind of stuff. And they actually believed that redheads, when you died, you were going to come back as a strigoi. And so what they did to the redheads who died, they nailed their coffin shuts and put a stake through their hearts after they were dead to prevent anything from happening. Now, that's an early case of, I guess, gingeritis.
Yeah, there is that. Like, there's a lot of, if you look at historical stuff where monsters and creatures, they come from like this, it's just people who are different, right? So like, oh, gingers come back to life and eat our children and stuff. It's just a way to like, it's just like, oh, they're different than us, so we're gonna make up stories about them, right? So,
and if you look at this nocturnal bird women who feed off children, why isn't it men?
The succubus is also like a ghost woman or demon woman who sucks blood and sucks out your soul. There's even an ancient Babylonian, I know I wrote it down, in Babylon, Lilith, the legend of Lilith. Lilith was like Adam's first wife from the Bible, right? But then she turns into a demon and like eats children. So it's like, whoa, where did that come from?
Wait a second here. So you're finding someplace where
it's a Babylonian
wife before Eve.
Yeah. So instead of being made out of Adam's rib, Lilith was made out of the earth or
Adam's
something.
chicken.
No, it was like she was made out of the earth or something. So then she was evil, and then she didn't turn out. So,
It's like, God, what'd you give me this woman for? Hey, oy vey.
but there is that, right? Like a lot of times, it's the same with witches, right? It's like women are, men don't like women, so they like make stories up and make them evil and stuff. But I wrote down lots of different names for vampires. In England, they were called revenants. But they had a lot of the same.
Like the name of a great movie for a vampire movie, The Revenants.
Revenants, yeah. Or a punk band.
Yeah.
In India, there was a creature called the Bhuta, which could turn into animals.
I feel like that's a good name to call someone if you're like mad at them. You're nothing but the Bhuta. You stupid
Isn't it?
Bhuta.
But that's a common one too, turning into animals, right?
Yeah.
Some people consider the chupacabra to be a type of vampire because it sucks the blood of goats. It's like a creature that sucks the blood of goats.
Yeah, that one's almost mixed with the werewolf, kind of like in between.
It's in between. That's around, and that's from Puerto Rico. Lugaru is another one that's like from that area of the world, Central America, and that's it's kind of like a werewolf, but it's also, some people think of it kind of like a vampire too, because it attacks people and it can only be out at night and stuff like that.
That sounds like a wrestling move.
The Lugaru.
Oh no, he's got him in the Lugaru.
We've got the Strix, ancient Rome. There was an ancient Roman that way they were also like female, kind of like succubus. Upir is Russian, which is a person. Like now, this is interesting. This ties into one of our old episodes too. The Upir was somebody who was cursed before they died, and then they would come back, and they would kill people. So
you could curse someone into an oot beer, like a root beer?
No, Upyr. Upir.
Oop.
Yeah. Oop. And then the last one I wrote down was the Wak from the Philippines, which was a bird-like creature that could be summoned by witches that would also eat children. So
is that the one with the half body? There's also one that had a half body from the Philippines.
Could detach itself from its torso and fly around the sky. Yeah. Pretty scary stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, that's how you could get out of a hold, eh? You just detach yourself from your...
He's got him in the sharpshooter. Up, not anymore. No, he's biting his neck. So where do we think these legends, they just come out of nowhere? Like, it's fear-based? What is it?
I think that's, and also like the concept, so this umbrella term vampire doesn't really start being used until like the 1700s. Before that, there was just all these other weird creatures and everything, right? And then in the 1700s, I wrote it down, so there's this theologian, a French theologian, so like a monk or like someone who studies theology, and he wrote a book. His name was Dom Augustine Calmet, and in 1751, he wrote a book called Treatise on the Apparitions of Spirits and on Vampires or Revenants. And he kind of it was a whole bunch of stories from different places about different creatures, and he was the first person to kind of start using this term vampires to like describe all of them. But even in his title, he says spirits and or vampires or revenants.
So vampires could be real, but they're not what we think they are. Is that what he's proposing?
He was actually it's a treatise, and he was trying to be a bit scientific. Like back in this time, like 1750s, like you have to remember that like people studying in the church were like philosophers, so they were trying to figure out what was going on in the world. So he was like making this book to try to like, collect all these stories of like people coming back from the dead, people sucking blood, creatures of the night, these kind of things. But from that treatise, it popularizes the idea of vampires, and then eventually you start getting these novels, right? So there's like a novel called The Vampire, spelled with a Y. And then there was, obviously Bram Stoker's Dracula is written in 1897. So like by that time, it was already in this public consciousness where people like, if you wrote a novel about a vampire, people are like, oh yeah, we know what a vampire is, right? So it did have to kind of become a like culturally accepted concept where it's like, now you understand what a vampire is. But they
So
could be based on something real.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because like, were they the aliens of the day?
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, we're not getting any alien sightings back then. So were they the aliens of the day and the focus of the day, right?
Also, there is a lot of like, there is some actual like real historic kind of evidence that like something was going on. And some people say like, well, if vampires are real, how come there's none today? It could have been a type of disease that made people do this, and maybe they died out, or maybe they're just being really secretive,
You
right?
know what? I'm glad you said that, because I found a list of a couple people that were real life vampires.
Well,
In
let's get
in
into
uh,
it.
in 1912, there are 40 people killed, and they're all along the railroad line. And I guess they built up a posse, and this guy named Arnold Poole. Oh no, sorry, August Delgrange, and so I guess he had a bunch of minions with him and helping him kill all these people, and he would kill him through biting him on the neck and drink the blood, the whole bit.
Hmm.
And so I guess they eventually found him and killed him, and that was that was probably the last vampire that we actually had that was going around, kind of a serial killer vampire.
Well, that's the thing too. Like vampires could be real, vampire hunters could be real. Vampire hunters could have just killed them all, right? And if you kill the last vampire, because we could also get into that, like how does a new vampire turn into a vampire? Like there's a bunch of different ideas, right? But if you
So
killed the last one, they would be gone. That's the thing.
so we also have in sorry, where was it? Where was the Impaler from? Do you remember?
Vlad?
Yes.
Was he Romanian? I think he's
Yes.
Romanian.
Well, in Romania, Arnold Pale, he became a vampire after falling to death on a hay wagon.
Oh.
So he died, and then he came back, and so what happened is people were dying, and so they decided to dig up his grave. So he was dead for 40 days. And after 40 days, there's going to be a lot of decomposition of your body, right? And his body was absolutely fine. There's blood in his system, and there's blood on his mouth and on his shirt. And so they made sure they cut off his head. They did the whole bit, and made sure. But more people turned into vampires in Romania at that time as well. Someone ate a sheep that they said Arnold Pale had attacked or whatever, and so I don't know if it was just people freaking out because I don't know, like a witch hunt sort of thing, but they ended up saying she turned into a vampire too, and there's a couple others that turned into vampires as a result in that area at that time, and they
Well,
had
that's so Romania's where Vlad the Impaler is from. That's the 1400s. So I watched one documentary. I don't know if you saw this, where they unearthed this tomb, and it was actually built inside a wall. So they were breaking down this wall, and then there was a tomb inside the wall, which seemed like a lot of trouble because they like put it inside a wall that was built over it, right? And then in the tomb, the coffin was like it had large stones over it. It was nailed shut. It was like so much trouble had gone into like keeping this thing in there, right? And then when they opened it up, they found like stake through the heart. They found the head there. I think they had a nail through the forehead, right? All this trouble. Oh, no, it was 3 stakes. Now I remember it was 3 stakes: a stake through the head, a stake through the neck, a stake through the torso, and a stake through the ankles to like hold this thing down. And they think it could have been the tomb for Vlad the Impaler. Like after people eventually killed him, that they did this because they thought he was a vampire. And that's the thing is that like that's going through a lot of trouble burying somebody, right? That's a lot of work to do. So you really these people are believing that this person's going to, you know, get out of their coffin, right?
And we talked about this earlier in a couple other shows. Could this belief give the vampire power? Because belief is belief. People don't understand that believing in something gives it power.
Yeah, and that's like I don't know if we've talked about it on the show before too, but like so believing in the vampire's power could like give it power, but also then like the reason that like you know, showing signs of your like your own spiritual belief, or like if you or a religion, like, you know, the cross, or people just saying like, you know, in the name of Jesus, those kind of things, because then you're showing you're giving power to a different belief, and you're showing that you believe in that other thing, and that's what fights off the demon or the vampire, right? It's like, oh, the demon and vampire is like, oh, I can't, you know, I can't take advantage of you because
Well, I
you're already
believe
part of
in
this.
that so strong. It's not just the belief to me. It's actually so. Yeah, a little bit of wrestling with why it's happening. Uh, I think it's actually God coming to the rescue rather than my belief. So there's that.
Yeah, but I think like, yeah, so that's kind of like a spiritual idea of like, you know, good forces and evil forces. But I do think like physically, even if there was like an actual, because really, if you look at what vampires are, it's a type of disease. It's something that's contracted into somebody else, right? Like it could be like a physical disease. If the vampire hunters, so to say, which apparently there were historically there were also people who like studied vampires and were actually trying to stop them, then they just like eradicated it, right? And it's like that's why we don't have any more today. That it
So
could
you
have been
think
something
that
that really did happen, but it
do
just it
you
was
think
a short time period over history. Like not short time period, like Vlad the Impaler is 1400s, right? And then you gave us some history around the early 1900s, right? You said that guy was 1911. So that maybe that's the period where vampires existed.
well the last one was 1912.
1912, yeah.
It was the last one.
So there's that like what 500-year history that like maybe that's just how long it took us to get rid of that disease. You
So
know,
you're saying that it's an actual disease that makes you want drink blood?
could be.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. It could affect your brain.
Maybe it's a mental illness.
It would be kind of both, right? Because maybe your body's craving blood for some reason. Did you know that here's a little fact that children, I heard these stories because I used to be a teacher, and I actually met teachers who told me that they actually saw this happen. Children who have calcium deficiency, there was a teacher who told me he actually caught one of his kids eating chalk because chalk has calcium. The kid craved calcium so much. Yeah, and this actually, and I was like, what? That sounds ridiculous. But like somehow the kid's body knew that, like, oh, there's calcium. I need that thing that's in there. And he caught the kid eating chalk.
There's
And then he
calcium.
went to the doctor and found out that, oh, the kid has a calcium deficiency and needs calcium.
So is there actually calcium in chalk?
Chalk is chock full of calcium.
Oh, is that a sponsor in chalk?
We're being sponsored by Chalk. I don't have a piece of chalk with me because I ate it all. I have some Tums. This is the closest thing I have. So this is a good calcium supplement. Children, if you're low on calcium, don't eat chalk. Just buy some Tums. They're delicious.
And you could draw on the
assorted fruit flavor. You don't have to, you know, chalk tastes awful. Right?
It reminds me, so I was a youth pastor a number of years ago, and so I'd played some you know, you want to have fun with the kids, and so I was playing what was that? What's that show where they have to do stuff like eat stuff and deal with bugs? You remember that show with
Fear Factor?
Yeah. So I was doing Fear Factor, and I was actually paying the kids money to eat certain things. And so, yeah, I had them eat like.
That's why you're not a youth pastor anymore.
I had them eat a fillet of fish with chocolate in it, just stuff like that. So that set a bad trend. And one day, this kid, he goes, Aaron, if you give me $5, I'll eat this chalk. I'm like, I'm not giving you $5. He's like, okay, I'm eating the chalk anyways. I'm like, no, stop. And he just ate the chalk right in front of me. I was like, he's going to pay me. I'm like, I'm not paying you. You should not. It was crazy.
He had a calcium deficiency. I'm telling you, this is a real
thing.
he
had a brain deficiency.
No, because he was eating it even though you didn't give him the money. See, because he wanted to eat it.
He could coerce it out of me by eating the chalk.
Okay, here's the thing. People who work with children have some Tums with you, because Tums will work as well, and they're flavored.
And they also taste like chalk.
They do taste, well, because it is chalk. It's basically calcium. It's just, that's all it is. But anyway, we got a little bit sidetracked. Did you notice that, Aaron?
No, that's never.
That always happens when we have to introduce one of our sponsors, though.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I got another historical vampire. Maybe we can close the case on this. Okay, Elizabeth Bathory. Have you ever heard of her? Also known as the Blood Countess.
The Blood Countess.
So she lived from 1560 to 1614. She was married to a very rich count in what used to be Hungary. Hungary used to be a giant empire. Geographically, where they were would now be Slovakia, but it was all this giant empire called Hungary. So her husband dies, leaves her with all this land. She's insanely wealthy, right? And then one of her neighbors, Count George, starts hearing all these stories of Elizabeth Bathory killing women, her servants, torturing her servants, keeping them in dungeons, killing them, all this stuff, right? So he goes to investigate in 1610, and when he gets to her castle, they find a couple girls dead. They find some dead bodies. They find there's like a girl that she's torturing, and then they they start to make this case against her, right? And they bring all the court in and everything. Her accomplices, like the people that work for her, they were executed and tried. She was never executed. She just was confined to her castle for the rest of her life. But there were all these stories. There was all these stories in the villages that like servants who would go work for her, like these women who would go work for her, she would torture them, kill them, bathe in their blood. And people said that the Countess Elizabeth Bathory, thought that if she bathed in the blood of young women, that it would keep her young. Okay. So maybe not a vampire, but maybe, who knows? And then there's some accounts that she could have killed 600 girls, which means that she's one of the most successful serial killers in history.
Yeah.
But some people don't think she's a vampire. They just think that she was like a psychopath.
Yeah, the blood thing is the blood and the young thing is a common theme in a vampire. So she's vampiric.
She's vampiric.
The word.
See, but maybe she had a craving to bathe in blood.
Yeah,
just like eating chalk. She's just like, my body needs, and it could just be an iron deficiency. Like it just be because blood has a lot of iron in it. Maybe it's just an iron deficiency.
Yeah, she just ate a steak, not the wooden one. So we had some murders recently. In London in 2002. Manuel Ruda, 23, and Daniel, he's 26. And so what they did, they declared themselves as satanic vampires. And so they decided they were going to lure someone in. And so Daniel's friend, they made friends and whatever. And they lured him in, and I guess they nailed him with a hammer. And then they stabbed him 66 times. They drew a pentagram on his stomach and then drank the blood. And I forget how many years they got in jail, but I think they ended up going not to jail, but a psychiatric sort of place. So
So
it's
maybe
still alive and well.
tying into your idea that it could just be like a mental fixation, like a mental
Well,
illness.
here's my thing on that. Just because you are hearing voices to tell you to do something doesn't mean you have to do it. Right?
But
So
people
if
do.
I
I mean, I
do,
don't know.
if you tell me to do something, I have a choice to make, right? And so if you tell me to go do something, I say, forget it, go eat your hat. If it's a good thing, I'm like, you know what, that's a good idea. If it's a bad thing, I say no. So, I think these are evil people, and they deserve to be in jail, not a psychiatric place.
Well, I think that there needs to be some kind of institution that confines them. Like, obviously, we can't just have people like this running around in society.
Like we
I
need
agree
an
with that.
Arkham. We need an Arkham asylum. Hook us up, man.
But now we're getting into a whole topic of just like criminology and like, why do people do crime and what makes somebody, a sociopath or a psychopath or something like. Because like a sociopathic person, like there's a pathology where they either don't have compassion or empathy, and they don't understand the pain that they're even inflicting onto their victims because they can't really understand that other people feel pain, right? Maybe they're insensitive to their own pain, like they don't even, so it's like it's a whole issue with like, yeah. And I don't know if you can just say like, just because me and you can stop ourselves from doing bad things, other people might just have like, they might just be completely powerless over their actions, like they just, because there's all these, like we talked about it last week, right, with someone saying the devil made them do it, and then they plead that in court, and it's like, I guess they're just so powerless that they can't, they don't have the power to fight that voice, to fight that thing. But I agree, they need to be institutionalized. They need to be either in jail or something where they're,
Well, yeah. You know about that case from your hometown, the guy from Winnipeg, or was it Saskatchewan?
It happened. It happened
the
in
guy
the prairies.
cut the guy's head off.
Yeah, on the Greyhound bus.
The Greyhound bus.
Yeah, Lee, I think his name was. I can't remember now.
But yeah, he hardly spent any time in an institution.
That's true. He went to I think it was the Selkirk Mental Health, and then he was out on like a kind of like parole. Like there would be somebody watching him, but still, you're right. He's then able to mix with the population. I think the idea there is that like if someone gets on the right medication, that they're then deemed to be safe.
It's actually pretty scary for someone to go off again, right? That who's stopping him from cutting someone else's head off. But we're a bit on a rabbit trail here. But this is a good segue for vampires. It started out as monsters, and then it turned into this charming, handsome guy who happened to also like to kill you.
I think happens in Bram Stoker's Dracula, because he made him this kind of like well-dressed, suave kind of count that was kind of a little bit attractive, like to the characters when they first meet him. And I think that's the first time where it's like the vampire is not really like a monster. Now he's like this rich person who's kind of charismatic. And that was kind of a twist that like, in that era of novels, like that's like kind of like the 1800s, that it was that idea that like, people were really suave and all this, right? So yeah, I think that's where it shifts. But now we even had another shift recently, like I would say in the last 40 or 50 years, where it's like now they're like teen heartthrobs and like Buffy the Vampires, Twilight, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and like now it's being turned into this like teenage thing which is really weird.
And now he's pretty much a good guy.
And then they kind of vampires can become, well, Blade is half vampire, right? The Blade, this Marvel superhero, he's half vampire so that he has some of the powers of a vampire so that he can fight other vampires and protect humans from them. It's kind of weird.
But in Twilight, he's a hero.
In Twilight, he's a hero. Although, I mean, I've never actually read the books. I probably shouldn't say anything about them.
I've
I
seen the
watched.
first movie. That's it.
Yeah, me too. I saw the first movie. Yeah, obviously, you know, what's his name? I can't remember his name, but the male vampire, Robert Pattinson, is like charming and everything and one of the heroes. Although, if you look at the relationship between him and the girl, he's kind of creepy and like, you know, follows her around and stalks her and is kind of controlling her life and stuff. So it's like, I don't know if it's a healthy relationship.
No, definitely not. But yeah, everyone's still like, all the girls watching the movie are still into it though.
And also, he's a vampire. Like, you know, you bring a boyfriend home and it's like, oh, this guy's creepy. He follows you around. He's trying to control your life.
It's okay, Mom. He's a vampire.
That doesn't make it okay.
It's okay, Mom. He's a vampire. That's what they do.
All right. Well, I have a question for you, Aaron. You probably already answered it. I think I know what your answer is. If you knew a vampire and they offered to turn you into a vampire, would you turn into a vampire?
No.
Yeah. I didn't think you would.
How about you?
No.
Same question.
No way. I love daylight, man. I love walking around in the sun.
Well, yeah, that's some of the things. Like, you're getting eternal life, but it's not a fun life. Like, you're having to kill all these people. Still, you need that blood.
No. Yeah, that's the question right down to it. Is like, you could live forever, but you'd have to kill people all the time. Like, I'm an absolute no on that. I'm like, no way. Even I'm pretty sure that even if I was given the option where like somebody was like, we're going to kill you unless you kill this person, I'd actually probably just die because I don't want to live my life where I've you know, killed somebody. Right.
Oh, exactly. I wouldn't have that would be, that's something enough to kill yourself over, at the fact that you killed somebody. Right. So you might as well just do the honorable thing. And
well, and that's the thing too. Like, you become a vampire. What if you can't even kill yourself? And then you're just cursed forever.
Well, also you're like this. You're so weak from not having any blood. You have to get they break into some blood banks at nighttime, I guess.
Yeah, that was in. Have you ever? Oh, okay. Here's another question for you. Favorite vampire movie?
Oh,
what do you think?
Oh.
As the audience can tell, we don't actually prepare these questions beforehand.
I'm gonna go with the Tom Cruise, Bram Stoker's one.
Okay, you've mixed up two movies there.
What's
Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise was in Interview with the Vampire.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Just not the Bram Stoker Dracula.
Okay. I'm amalgamating those two and make it one bad movie.
They're both great movies. If somebody could just like mix them together, like just edit it so that I'm watching both movies at once somehow.
Yeah, because I need both those together now.
Yeah, Interview with Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Right.
The ultimate film. But I was going to mention that about Interview with the Vampire. There's a part where Tom Cruise's character, he gets buried in a swamp, I think, for like years, like decades or something, and he hasn't had blood in a really long time, and they make him look like really gross, like he's all like dried out and like he looks like a monster, right? So that's the thing, is like if you don't get blood, you turn into this like shriveled up, disgusting ghoul.
Now, I'm not a Tom Cruise fan. Born on the 4th of July and Interview with the Vampire are probably the only movies I like of his. The rest, because they're all the same character. But in these two movies, I think he does an amazing job.
Okay, well, the last question I have for you, and I already had this question planned. Is Tom Cruise a vampire?
Well, he's the closest thing to a vampire, and that's a Scientologist.
Wow.
That was a nice setup. Thank you.
Well, but do you know how old he is? Do you know how old he is? Like, just think of his face and how he looks, right?
Well, he's got the Hollywood money. He can do all that, you know.
He is.
A lot of the Hollywood people keep themselves looking young.
Okay, he looks like he's 30, and at the time of recording this podcast, he is 59 years old. He's 59 years old.
What's that Scientology gene he's got there? It keeps him young.
You notice something if you watch his recent movies, like all the Mission Impossibles and everything, he never gets involved with a girl in any of his movies anymore. Right?
Yeah, I
He
noticed that.
doesn't like have a girl that he's like hooking up with or whatever, which is like the early Mission Impossibles he always is, because that's like the James Bond type of thing to do. But I think the reason is that they're gonna hook him up with some 30-year-old or 20, late 20s actress. And then in your mind, you're like, wait, this guy's 59. And then
Yeah,
there's that kind of thing where you're like, this is weird. Because
yeah,
it's already weird that he's jumping off buildings and he's this like
yeah,
superhero
yeah,
spy guy who's like fighting people all the time. And it's like, he's 59.
yeah.
So that makes you wonder, is he drinking people's blood?
Hmm.
I guess that's a question for the ages.
That's something to wrestle with. So just kind of wrapping this up, you got any other things to talk about here that we wanted to?
I mean, oh, I also like the Castlevania video games. I don't know if you're a video game fan.
I like the more recent ones with placed on PlayStation 3 with the sort of like God of War sort of feel to it.
Oh, I haven't played the newest ones. The last one I played was PlayStation 2, I think, was Curse of Alucard.
Okay, yeah, these are the side-scrolling games, but
it was still side-scrolling, which I really like. I like that style. Like, I'm really into retro gaming. So, and you could turn into a bat, you could turn into mist, you could turn into a wolf, and you had to turn into different animals to like get through different parts of the level and stuff. And that game was awesome, man. So good.
But they did a good job on the Castlevania for PlayStation 3, making it sort of a not a first person, but what's the one other one? Anyways, you know what I'm talking about.
Third person.
Yeah, where you're seeing it just the guy.
Yeah, God of War is third person.
Yeah, kind of like God of War.
That's the closest I'll become a vampire. That's the closest I'd ever come to being a vampire, is playing one in a video game. That's it.
It's also Netflix. You have the Castlevania series on there.
Oh, the cartoon, yeah.
Yeah. Animation. We don't use the C word here. Come on. The C word. We don't use that here. Animation.
Okay. It's for grown adults. If grown adults want to watch animation and play with action figures, then they are allowed to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's Batman, the animated series, not Batman, the cartoon series, right? There's a difference.
Exactly. Yeah. Animation. Action figures. Or are they called model figures?
No, I think they're
action models.
Action figures. And they're always worth more when you keep them in the box. Don't open the box.
Don't play with them. Even though you want to play with them, don't play with them.
Yeah, most people don't even open the box. They just put it on their wall and put it on the shelf.
I don't even bother buying them. I just watch unboxings on YouTube. That's good enough for me.
Which brings me to our next subject. We are on our, you're probably watching this on our Facebook group. We are going to start doing unboxings of pro wrestling crates once a month. It's unboxing with the Ghost.
Nice.
It's Theodore the Ghost Gatlin, and he will be doing an unboxing once a month of his crate to see what he got, his goodies in this pro wrestling crate. So that's exciting.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. What else is going on? What else is going on with effing wrestling?
Tomorrow on the podcast, we will be talking the greatest tag teams of all time. Me and the JFB, we have got our top 10 lists, 5 each, who the greatest tag teams of all time were. So tune in tomorrow on Just Another Evan podcast on Spotify, Google, or Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Just look up Just Another Evan podcast and subscribe. And guess what? Subscribe to this one right here. Hit the like.
Right now. It's right there.
Subscribe. And you can see the t-shirts. This is Live the Gimmick. We got the Gimmick Boy. And behind me, you see the Effin' Wrestling, the Effin' Bird t-shirt. And we've got more ideas rolling around in our head, and they're going to be coming out soon. We also are working hard on getting Adrian Adonis in the Hall of Fame. We're working it. So follow Real Keith Frank on Twitter. That's Adrian Adonis's name. We run that. And follow us at All Effin' Wrestling on Twitter. All Wrestling Wrestling on Instagram. And I think that's about it.
All right. So until next time, everybody, remember, keep on wrestling with the